Hello and welcome to the Telegraph Studio and Business Reporter's Cloud campaign, hosted by the Telegraph Online. I'm Alistair Greener. Now, some organisations ignore IT security. Some are unsure about how to build a secure system, so they overcompensate and use a robust solution. With so many experts, courses, training and IT solutions, how is it that we still face these challenges? Robust systems can stand in the way of making the best of our digital capabilities. So how can we find the right balance between security and flexibility? Well, that's what we're talking about today with Adrian Davis from ISC Squared. Good morning.
Good morning, Alistair.
So what exactly attracts cyber criminals? And for that matter, who should worry about becoming a victim?
Everyone can become a victim. But it's not just about cybercrime, it's about cyber risk. Cyber risk is much bigger. It contains things such as companies struggling to use the internet properly to meet Christmas online shopping demands. It relates to individuals having their bank accounts ransacked. It's a lot of things. But basically it's about how you deal with the risk of using devices, computers, systems and the internet together.
So what is the real problem here?
The real problem is a lack of understanding about cyber risk and what it means for businesses and for people and for society as a whole.
So these risks, you're implying that it actually affects everybody and more importantly, every organisation. So does this become an IT issue or is it a business issue?
It's a business issue. It's a risk. Just like strategic risk or credit risk or market risk, any of the classic risks that corporate governance talks about and boards spend their time talking about. Every single organisation, I think, in the world now is reliant on IT. Certainly in the Western world and probably in the developing world now, we couldn't actually do business without IT, without computers and tablets and smartphones and all the devices that we all know and love. They're all there to support the business growing and succeeding. And if the business says that's an IT problem, then actually the business is cutting itself off from the very thing which helps it succeed and grow. So for us, cyber risk is just another business risk that has to be dealt with in the same manner as you deal with any other business risk. Forget all the acronyms, forget all the fancy words. It's all about, if we do this and we use this system, what will happen if it goes wrong, and how can we as a business survive if it goes wrong? Or if a cyber criminal decides to attack us and tries to break the system, can we keep going? They're the questions that the business people need to ask. And it's incumbent on IT not to use all the technology speak. It's incumbent on cybersecurity professionals not to use that technology speak and say, if this happens, here's what we can do and here's what we think will be the end result.
Now, you said that IT are actively involved, but business leaders need to be more actively involved. Can you be a bit more specific about what you mean and why that's so important?
As IT provision changes, as more and more companies move to the cloud, they buy in IT services, you become more dependent on third parties, on suppliers, which means that you have to know and assess that risk. Because if a supplier fails for whatever reason, how is your business going to keep growing and succeeding? How are you going as a business to get over that problem? And unless the board are addressing it and treating it like a business risk, then you are really doing yourself a disservice.
Now that sounds fairly obvious from what you're explaining here. The trouble is that we're at this point where so many organisations and business leaders and owners aren't getting it and they're not actively involved. Why are people taking so long to understand this?
I think there is a clear lack of understanding and perhaps a clear lack of communication between IT and the business. The lack of understanding is, what is cyber risk? How does it impact a business? The lack of communication is, well, IT people have gone, hey, and cybersecurity people, I can't just throw the towel at the IT people. We've said it's a technology problem. Leave it with us, it's fine, we'll deal with it. Actually, it's not a technology problem. It's a people problem as well. And how people engage with technology, how they use it, they need to be addressed just as much as buying the great flashy kit that goes ping and stops all the attacks. We haven't communicated well, we have a lack of understanding, and what we're finding out now is that as we have all these problems in the media, both sides are starting to communicate and starting to talk to each other. And that's really what counts now, is that we are starting that conversation.
You say it's starting the conversation, it's about better communication, but ultimately, whose job is it to actually educate the business community to this way of thinking?
I think there's probably a couple of strands. It's you. It is the business. The business needs to learn, just as it's learned about HR and law and marketing and so on, but it's also the cybersecurity professional as well. We have to engage more with the business. We have to share our knowledge better. We have to communicate in the language of business better, so that both sides have a common set of terms, a common understanding that we can then actually start to not only discuss things, but start to make better and more informed decisions.
Let's talk about ISC squared. What exactly do you do? Where do you fit into all of this?
Well, we're the world's largest professional body for information security. We're independent, we're objective. Our driver is to share frontline knowledge. It's to share the experiences of people who are out there securing systems, helping to combat cybercrime, and share it. Not only amongst ourselves, because what's the point? We want to share it to as wide a community, a wider society as we can, because we believe that if we share the knowledge, then we won't see some of the problems we see today with poor websites being attacked, people being having their bank accounts cleaned out because they clicked on the wrong link. That's where we come from. It's about independent, objective sharing of knowledge.
Okay, so it's sharing of knowledge. Perhaps you could be a bit more specific and give me an example of that actually in practice.
Yes, we have a couple that we do. The first one is we've worked extensively with UK universities, and now cybersecurity actually is a mandatory component of many computing science and IT related degrees, which is great because that means not only are the people coming into our profession, and we have a shortfall estimated about 1.5 million by 2020 of cybersecurity professionals, but it means that people who work in IT, people who go and work for businesses, will have an understanding about the cyber risk I mentioned earlier on. We're also working with the City and Guilds to bring 16-year-olds and on into vocational training for cybersecurity, so they can then go and complete apprenticeships, or again when they start their jobs they have a knowledge. But we're also working with governments, with European and international standards organisations to codify this best practice, this frontline knowledge, so we can share it right across, as I said before, not only our own professional community but business people, with academia and so on. And we're also engaged with business every day because, as I said before, it's a business risk. Every day we're working with business, we're talking to business people and explaining cyber risk and how they can break down that lack of understanding.
So we've talked quite a lot about this ever-changing landscape in which we find ourselves, and we're bringing these two units together, as it were, but how do you actually measure success?
I think success can be measured simply by the conversations, the fact that boards, managers, marketers, cybersecurity professionals are all talking about cyber risk day in, day out. I think it can also be measured by the fact that cyber risk is part of what the society talks about as well. Success is someone looking at a website going, that doesn't feel right. I'm not going to go there. There's something wrong. It's that kind of instinctive knowledge. There is actually a third piece of the success, which is development and creation of IT-based systems, build security in from the start. That will take time as well. That's an educational piece. But overall, the real measure of success is the fact that cyber risk becomes part of the day-to-day.
So we're talking about day-to-day now, and you're talking about building a more robust system. So who should be involved in this campaign? What's the main objective? Let's say over the next 5 years or so, what should we be looking at?
I think that the main objective is to build that big tent, is to get the right people around the table and to get everyone really understanding cyber risk. You know, going back to what I said right at the beginning, it's not just criminals, it's not just, you know, breaches, it's accidents. Understanding what they mean, understanding how they impact businesses, and understanding as a group how best to deal with those. And the second piece of success is educating society so we can have a more safe and secure cyber world, so that everybody understands a little bit about cyber risk and understands they have a role to play in reducing it.
Well, you've certainly given us a greater understanding of cyber risk and how we're all involved. Adrian Davis from ISC Squared, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you.